2016 was shaping up to be one of the most difficult and important years in all of TF2 history, with the rising threat from Overwatch being released and the rising pressure on Valve to finally release some kind of competitive matchmaking into the game. The upcoming Meet Your Match update was the most important update to come to TF2 ever. People believed the update needed to be the best update the game had ever seen to make sure that it doesn't die at the hands of Overwatch. To give some context, Overwatch is a very similar game to TF2 in a lot of aspects, and when I say a lot of aspects, it has different classes you can play as, different maps, and different game modes, and it kind of looks cartoony. Other than that, that's about it. The thing that was different about Overwatch though is that it was said to be releasing with a competitive matchmaking game mode from launch, or at least fairly soon after the initial launch of the game, which is something that TF2 at the time didn't have. And it was something that people in the community had been asking Valve for years at this point, citing that it was the only way to save the game and catapult it into being one of the biggest games out there. Or at least win the made-up war between Overwatch and TF2. Either way, it was detrimental to TF2's survivability that this update didn't flop when it first came out like End of the Line did. I believe this kind of pressure led to Valve rushing their way through the production of the Meet Your Match update, because unfortunately, when it came out, to everyone's despair, the update was absolutely terrible. Most of the features barely worked, you had to wait ages to get into a casual match, and for the first 24 hours, I don't think you could actually even find a casual match. There was penalties for leaving, which is absolutely ridiculous, and competitive very quickly filled up with bots. Cheating, hacking, bots. Which nowadays, tragically, actually sounds quite normal, but at the time, back in 2016, we weren't expecting something like that. Seeing bots was a rare occurrence in the game and almost a novelty, but they very quickly took over competitive matchmaking and made it unplayable for the vast majority of people. Meaning that we were left with a broken casual matchmaking system which replaced quick play and a competitive mode we couldn't actually use. Meet Your Match was always going to be a polarizing update. Changing the way matchmaking worked in TF2 forever was a big responsibility, and to get most of the community on board with that decision to remove quick play in favor of this new system, you had to be careful and you had to make sure it worked and was easy to understand. This was not an update you could rush out and have everything work out okay. There was far too much pressure on it. And unfortunately for Valve, this update felt like exactly that not much care had gone into the testing of the matchmaking systems, and that the whole thing was a rushed update to try and compete with Overwatch and their matchmaking systems. And of course, the pressure from the actual TF2 community can't have helped either. At the time this update came out, a lot of YouTuber friends I had at the time fully quit playing TF2 since they really despised this update. And while some of them returned in the months following when the system slowly improved, a lot of them left the game forever. And I can imagine a lot of other people in the community did the same thing. This update, at least for the first few months, really seemed to be the thing that would kill off TF2. Everyone has always said it would be Valve to kill this game. And people were worried back then that this was beginning to happen. The community's hope for the game at this point, until the matchmaking got a little bit better, was at an all-time low. Now, you may be thinking that this is just one bad update. Obviously, it changed the system a lot and it didn't work, but it did get fixed. Why is the community feeling so down and scared that this update didn't do well? You have to understand that at the time, we've just been through a lot of updates that were really controversial and polarizing already. While I loved Gunmetal and Tough Break, a lot of people criticized those updates for trying to make TF2 too much like CSGO. We also had End of the Line, which was also hyped up to be a huge update, and we'd get a new map with its own funky game mode, which was a cool take on Payload, and that never got actually released in this update, which kind of just left us with an update that only added a weapon reskin, new cosmetics and effects, and a pyro taunt. This was meant to be a major update, and it added in less content than the Smithmas seasonal update from 2020, which to me is a little bit mental. Luckily, End of the Line had an incredible SFM movie to go along with it, but if you take that away from the update, it's pretty lackluster. So the point I'm making is that a lot of people were getting fed up with Valve and really started to feel like they didn't understand what the community wanted and they didn't care about the game at all and were just trying to make money. Luckily, over time, the matchmaking system got a little bit better. Casual now does work, even though for the past few years the bots have been a huge issue. But before then, casual is now kind of working how I imagine Valve intended it to be working back when they first released it. And competitive matchmaking, well, that still is kind of dead, but apparently less bot-infested now, which is a good thing. I think it just suffers from the fact that most of the community don't queue for it because of all of these past bad experiences, and that makes people who are trying to play it having to wait hours to get into a game sometimes. I can't blame Valve for not trying to fix competitive matchmaking because that would be a monster of a task to get a large amount of the community to start playing that game mode again. I feel like if Valve really wanted competitive matchmaking to take off, they needed to make it work from the get-go. And they just didn't. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching the video. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you leave this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.